The morning sun beat down hard over the frontier town of El Cielo, baking the dirt streets into pale gold and stirring up little whirlwinds of dust that clung to everything and everyone. The air buzzed with noise, merchants shouting prices, mules braying, iron pots clanging. The smell of roasted corn, animal hides, and sweat hung thick. It was market day, and people from every ranch, fort, and tribal camp within 50 miles had come to trade. Samuel Kane, a weathered rancher with a gray beard and eyes the color of old steel, guided his horse slowly through the crowded street. He'd ridden in from his ranch at dawn thinking only of one simple errand, to buy a few pounds of salted meat for his ranch hands. His men were running low on supplies, and the winter stores were half empty. But as Samuel reached the center of the market, he noticed the crowd was unusually restless. A gathering was forming near the end of the street, where a wooden stage had been built beside the old saloon. At first he thought it was a livestock sale, maybe new horses or captured cattle. But when he drew closer, his stomach tightened. Standing on the platform were 5 native women, their wrists tied loosely with rope, their hair tangled and faces streaked with dirt. A fat man in a brown vest stood beside them, waving a sheet of paper and shouting over the noise. "Fresh from the northern raids," the auctioneer cried. "Strong, healthy, and obedient. Perfect for work, service, or company." The men around Samuel laughed and muttered crude jokes. He felt a wave of disgust crawl through him. He'd seen plenty of ugly things in his years. Blood, war, greed, but nothing quite like this. Slavery was outlawed now, at least on paper, but the frontier had its own rules written in dust and cruelty. He turned his horse to leave, but then he heard something. A low, broken sob. He looked back. One of the women had lifted her head. Her face was young but proud, her eyes dark and alive, full of quiet fire that refused to die. For a single heartbeat, Samuel met her gaze, and something inside him froze. He had come to the market for meat. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. The auctioneer's voice echoed across the square, cutting through the hot afternoon air like a whip. Next up, an Apache widow, strong, young, and worth every penny. Her husband fell at Red Creek last spring. "She'll work your kitchen or your stables, quiet as a shadow." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Men leaned on fence posts, tossing coins in their hands, their eyes glinting with mockery. Samuel Kane stood at the back, jaw clenched. He hadn't meant to stay, but that same woman, the one with the fire in her eyes, was now standing alone at the center of the platform. Her wrists were tied, her shoulders squared. There was defiance in her stance, even though the ropes spoke of defeat. The auctioneer tapped his cane. "We'll start at $10, he called out. $10 for the widow." No one spoke. Someone snorted. "Not worth half that," a drunk shouted from the side. Another man muttered, "She'll bite before she'll serve." Samuel's hands curled into fists. He didn't understand why anger burned so sharply inside him. Anger at these men, at the whole twisted spectacle, and maybe even at himself for watching. The silence stretched. Then, before he realized he was doing it, Samuel raised his hand. $15, he said, his voice carrying clear and low. The auctioneer blinked, surprised. 15? Sold to Mr. Kane. He slapped the gavel down with a grin, happy to have ended the awkward pause. The crowd murmured as Samuel stepped forward, their eyes following him. A few men shook their heads. Others chuckled. "The old fool's gone soft," someone whispered. Samuel ignored them. He climbed the steps and reached for the rope binding the woman's wrists. His calloused fingers worked the knot free. She stood still, unflinching, her gaze locked on his face. Up close he saw the dirt on her cheek, the faint scar above her brow, signs of hardship that hadn't dulled her dignity. "You bought me," she said, her English broken but steady. "Why?" Samuel hesitated, meeting her eyes. The sun beat hard on both of them, and for a moment, the whole market went silent around them. "Because no one else should own another human being," he said quietly, and handed her a blanket to cover her shoulders. The crowd laughed behind him, but Samuel didn't hear it. Something had shifted, a choice made in anger that would change both their lives forever. The sun was dipping low by the time Samuel Kane and the Apache widow, Nadine, left the market behind. The desert stretched endlessly before them, painted in gold and rust. The wind stirred the sand into soft ribbons that trailed behind the horse's hooves. Samuel rode ahead, silent, his broad shoulders stiff beneath his worn coat. Nadine sat behind him on the same horse, the blanket he'd given her wrapped tight around her frame. Neither spoke for a long time. The only sounds were the creak of saddle leather and the whisper of wind through the dry mesquite. Samuel's mind was heavy with questions he couldn't answer. What had possessed him to bid on her? He wasn't a savior, not by a long shot. He'd killed in the war, lost friends and family to raids and bullets, yet something about her eyes at that auction had cut through every layer of dust he'd built around his heart. As the trail narrowed along a dry creek bed, he finally spoke. "You got a name?" There was a pause, then a quiet reply. "Nadine." He glanced back slightly. "Nadine," he repeated, testing the sound. "What does it mean?" "Girl who survived," and she said simply. They rode on. A hawk circled high above them. The land around them was harsh and beautiful. Jagged rocks, twisted cactus, endless sky. Samuel broke the silence again. "You'll be free when we reach my ranch," he said, his tone cautious, almost apologetic. "You can go wherever you want." Nadine didn't answer right away. Her dark eyes followed the horizon as if searching for something she'd lost long ago. "If I go," she said finally, her voice soft but steady, "the soldiers will find me. Or the men in town. They will hunt me again." Samuel's grip tightened on the reins. He hadn't thought of that. Out here, freedom was a fragile thing. And for a woman like her, it could mean death. "Then stay," he said at last. "Work for me. You'll be safe there. I'll pay you fair." Nadine's lips curved into a faint, almost unreadable smile. "You think you bought me?" she murmured, her gaze steady on the setting sun. "But maybe I chose you." Samuel didn't answer. He just rode on, the desert wind cold against his skin. And for the first time in years, his heart wasn't. Weeks passed on the Kane ranch, and the desert slowly shifted from the harsh gold of summer to the softer browns of autumn. The air grew cooler, the nights quieter. Samuel's men had stopped whispering about the Apache woman who worked alongside them. Nadine earned her place not through words but through effort, rising before dawn, carrying water, mending fences, cooking meals that reminded the men of home. She spoke little, but when she did, her words carried weight. Samuel watched her from a distance at first, uncertain how to bridge the silent gulf between them. He'd bought her freedom, yet every day he felt more certain that it was she who had saved something inside him. There was a calmness to her presence, a steadiness he hadn't felt since the war. Sometimes in the evenings he'd find her standing alone by the corral, watching the mustangs run wild under the fading sun. One such evening, the sky burned orange and the horizon shimmered like molten glass. Samuel approached quietly, hat in hand. "You could leave now," he said, breaking the silence. "No one here would stop you." Nadine didn't look at him at first. "And where would I go?" she asked softly. "Everything I was, my people, my home, and is gone." She turned her gaze toward him then, eyes reflecting the sunset. "Here I have work. I have peace. Maybe that is enough." Samuel studied her face, the strength beneath the gentleness, the way she met the world without fear. "Peace," he repeated almost to himself. "It's been a long time since I've known that." Nadine smiled faintly, a rare thing that softened her entire face. "Then maybe we both start again," she said. The words lingered in the cooling air. The wind carried the scent of mesquite and horsehide, and somewhere a coyote called in the distance. Samuel felt something settle deep in his chest. A quiet understanding, not of ownership, but of two lives crossing paths for a reason neither could yet name. He had gone to the street market for meat, nothing more. But fate had given him a companion, a mirror, a chance at redemption. And as the stars rose over the desert that night, Samuel Kane knew this truth. Sometimes the things you never meant to find are the ones that save you.